We're joined on the phone today by author Chris Salewicz, and we're talking about his new book, Jimmy Page, The Definitive Biography. Hey, Chris, how you doing today?
Fantastic, Dustin. How are you?
I'm excellent. It's great to be speaking with you.
Lovely, man.
Well, let's talk about your new book, Jimmy Page, The Definitive Biography. It sounds like the book Led Zeppelin fans have been waiting for.
Well, I hope so. It's taken me a long time to do it. I think there's a lot of detail in there that I love building up detail in books, because I think that you then get the true reflection of the subject. You just need you just need all that material in there. I hope people like it.
Yeah, and I know you've got a lot of interviews with Page himself and a lot of other people who we probably have never heard from before.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I loved, for example, Dave Berry, who is the kind of this cult English singer, who's a fantastic performer. Actually, I remember seeing him. And one of his records was the song "The Crying Game," and I talked to him, and he said, I always insisted. He was quite big at the time in England. I can't remember if he was here. He said, I always wanted Jimmy on my records because I just could get on with him so well. And what I liked about him was that after he played the session, he would come into the kind of mixing room and listen to it. He would kind of see how it was being fitted together. Sometimes he would say, I don't like what I've done, I'll do it again. And this was in stark contrast to the other session musicians who'd all gone off with their golf magazines but at that point, But I think what's interesting, therefore, about that is, Jimmy's session. Jimmy does have he does have this reputation for being a bit tight, and he was kind of known jokingly as Lead Wallet at one time. And people have often said, oh, he was just doing those sessions because he, just to earn money. I don't think that was in fact, he earned very good money. He was on triple rates by the time he finished. But I think this is all part of him as a consummate artist. And I mean that as artist as opposed to just musician, because he did have that art school background, like John Lennon, like Pete Townsend. And he's learning his craft. The craft isn't just playing the guitar, it's understanding how the studio works, it's understanding everything, all the details that he would need when he came to create his big conceptual work, his great piece of art, which was Led Zeppelin. So when he goes into the studio to record the first album, he knows exactly what he's doing and how he gets that unique sound, which is like something, they're as punk rock as they could be, Led Zeppelin, when they started out, despite how they were kind of decried in 1977. Their sound was like, 1966 garage band.
Again, author Chris Salewicz with us, and we're talking about Jimmy Page, the defining biography. And it seems like Jimmy was kind of the guy who likes there to be, maybe some myth and some legend to his story, but was he pretty cooperative with you when you were trying to put the book together?
No, not really, actually. Not in the least bit. He didn't reply to anything that I sent to him. But I had interviewed him in the past, and I would see him around. And I wrote this book because I was in Los Angeles about 3.5 years ago, and I had several subjects that I was thinking of. And then and Los Angeles is a town that is a particularly, it was the Led Zeppelin town, And I had a dream, and it just said the dream was quite simple: write the Jimmy Page book. So that's why we're talking now. Actually, that's how come we're talking about this.
Well, of course, Led Zeppelin still beloved to this day. Do you get a sense maybe what direction Led Zeppelin might have gone in if they hadn't broken up back in 1980?
I kind of think it has sort of run its course, to be honest. I think that it had, and I think I don't think they could have gone. I don't think they could have gone on really, because that body of work is so fantastic. There's nothing. And also Jimmy Page himself is like, to me, he's like the quintessential English rock star. There is no one like him. There's no one comparable. Keith Richards is like an also-ran to me, in these stakes. This is Jimmy Page's. He lives he lived in a sort of 16th century mansion with a moat. He has this collection of kind of incredibly expensive classic cars he can't drive because he hasn't passed his test. And it's like Michael DeBar, who's the singer with Silverhead and Detective, who were on Swan Song, Led Zeppelin's label. I was a good friend of Jimmy's. He said, he's like, the thing about Jimmy is, he just knows everything about rock and roll, and he understands the perfect way to exit a limousine. And as he said, and he's the only rock star whose roadie was Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, definitely. As we mentioned, some kind of a myth to the Jimmy Page story, and he kind of went on to have, I guess, somewhat of a spotty solo career, I would say. But
he wasn't good, was it? I felt he was like, but I felt that was kind of, I think he was a bit of a lost soul for a time,
Yeah, it was unusual, but I always loved his soundtrack to Death Wish 2. I thought that was an odd thing.
That's great, but I don't, there's the Outrider album, 1988, I just don't like, and his work with Paul Rodgers also just seemed kind of like a pale imitation, really, The Firm. It seemed like a pale imitation, really, of what he should be doing, Sure. But I think he was just recovering. I think he was kind of literally in recovery at that time. And there's a bit of a story, there's a bit of an element of redemption about Jimmy Page, as there is often with many artists, like Joe Strummer, for example. The act with which you're so successful goes downhill, it finishes for whatever reason, that crest of the wave that you've been riding on finally breaks. You've got to find out who you are. And I think Jimmy has sort of found out who he is by being, he's like the magician is curating his own work. That's what people say, why doesn't he put out new material? Because he's more interested in ensuring the legacy of his great work, of his great artistic work, Led Zeppelin, the entirety of it. That's what he's working with.
Well, again, Jimmy Page, the definitive biography, is out now. Is there something else maybe in the works or something else we should look out for?
Well, from me, when I've recovered, I might tell you that there is something that I can't. I don't like talking about things till they're sort of fully realized. But this took me quite a long time, It took me quite a long time to recover from it as well. You imagine when you finished a book, it's finished now. Oh, I'll get on to the next thing. You don't realize you're just lying on the sofa, brain dead. I'm a little like probably Jimmy Page felt after the end of Led Zeppelin, actually.
Well, if that's, I'll maybe check back with you in a couple of years then when you're recharged.
Yeah, fantastic, Dustin. I'll be around, don't worry.
All right. Well, again, Chris, thank you so much for your time today, and definitely this is a cool book for fans of Led Zeppelin and just of music. Definitely an interesting time. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, man. Thank you.
And again, that was author Chris Salewicz, and his new book, Jimmy Page, The Definitive Biography, is available now.